serious filmmaking, let's say.
Yeah, I see. You also mentioned in that answer that you like to find some overlap or some integral common purpose by watching the performance and having the camera work with the performance. And this comes back now to a question about your own personal process. Do you shot list every scene beforehand, and then the second part of the question, or storyboard, or determine the shooting, the shot ideas beforehand in some form? And how much freedom do you allow yourself to completely change your mind when you see the rehearsal at the beginning of the day, the blocking or whatever?
Well, to answer the first part, it's totally dependent on the material and the style of the film, the requirements, the nature of what you're shooting. If I'm working on a big visual effects movie that has a lot of technical considerations and aspects, and a lot of people that are contributing different elements to shots, storyboarding, and very detailed storyboarding, especially if they're complex visual effects things, is almost essential. In fact, pre-visualizing scenes is totally essential now. I don't like to do that in general unless I'm doing that sort of work,
right?
Because I came from a school of really having performance and the story often, not always, but often dictate the visual approach so you can help the work evolve in conjunction. And certainly it does vary job to job. It varies with the director. Some directors are very particular about having things planned meticulously up front. Others are as particular about maintaining fluidity and the possibility of making it up as you go along. They feel that's an important aspect of the process. So in answer to the second part, I think it's actually hugely important to maintain an open mind, and I think certainly in my experience some of the real magic of cinema and filmmaking comes from, let's say, happy accidents of being able to take advantage of a situation when something evolves not as you planned and totally different, and recognizing that magic and saying that's really beautiful, that's special, that's something that needs to be captured. Now, if you work in a very rigid way, you can lose those things.
And totally stressed out and distracted by pressure.
It's even beyond being stressed. Really, it's more a fixated viewpoint. If you look at your filmmaking craft from a fixed point of view, it totally limits your ability to really see the magic of filmmaking. And it's a really there's often an undefined magical quality.
Sure.
Certainly, we're all familiar with seeing films that have, a special poetry, and some filmmakers are fantastic at capturing that. Terrence Malick's an example. I haven't worked with him, but by accounts of my friends that have worked with him, it's a torturous process of almost waiting for magic to happen. Now, if you sit around waiting for magic to happen, you can wait a long time. But there's a lesson in that, I think.
Sure.
And it's that lesson and that opportunity is available every day. You go to work and you're creating film. It's important, I think.
What are your techniques to maintain that frame of mind so that you can be attentive to those moments of magic and recognize them? Do you like to watch monitor for rehearsal? Do you stand and watch with your naked eyes? Do you stand by camera? Do you try to get in on rehearsals before principal photography? What do you do to get open to that?
It's a state of mind as much as anything. I think personally for me, it's the process of filmmaking is incredibly intense. It's there are elements of it that's very mechanical and labor intensive, and it's work. I mean, it's physical work. I mean, you guys will know, even whatever you're doing, you set up the equipment, and you've got a time restriction, and you've got a few shots to do in a day, and there's a mechanical element to the process of filmmaking which can distract from the important work. And the important work is to make sure that what you're capturing and filming is going to represent the story in the best way, is going to really do justice to your story. Now, the danger if you get too caught up in the mechanics of it, it goes back to the point I was making earlier. You can lose sight of what's really is what's really important in the process.
So you have to be able to switch gears.
And I try and remain, in a sense, somewhat detached. I mean, it's probably the wrong thing to say, detached, but mentally and emotionally detached from the mechanics of it a little bit. Part of me is very focused and making sure things, but I make sure that there's a part of my, brain that is tries to keep free, and that's, it's important then to be relaxed, to not be stressed, as you're saying, to really keep your eyes open and trust your eyes, work with your eyes, not your head. One of the greatest things I learned when I was a camera operator, I had a sort of almost an epiphany one day at work, because I got to a point of enough, I wouldn't say confidence, but enough confidence to stop thinking about, with my head, about the shot. The shot, here's a guy walking in the room. Well, my head says the camera should be here and I should follow him around. He's going to sit there and I'm going to go there and maybe we'll track and do that. And at a certain point, I thought, well, like in a logical way that works, but does it look great? Is it interesting visually? And I made a switch at that point. I stopped trusting my head and started trusting my heart and my eyes, and really looked at it and thought, is this really working in the best way for the film?
That duality and that switch is terribly, terribly interesting to me. It's really what most of my questions ultimately turn out to be about. So it leads me to another, sort of a flip side of that question, and that is, I know that a lot of times, watching my students, and I've certainly had the experience myself, it's very easy to look at something coming together and say, that's wrong, that's not right. But you don't know how to necessarily express what it should be. You can just say that it's not working. And so if you've now transitioned to this where you're shooting more intuitively or emotionally and thinking, does this feel right to the story? Does that minimize the number of times you look at a shot and you say, wait, that's not right? Or do you still have that moment and you have to back out of your plan, and does that force you into a mechanical way of thinking again? I mean, does it make your shooting process easier is really, I guess, the question is.
Yeah, I don't know about easier. I think, if I'm understanding your question right, I think you learn to sort of trust your instincts is a hugely important thing. And you, in conjunction with that, a big challenge, especially in commercial filmmaking, is to be prepared to, once you've gone down a track, say exactly what you're saying is, no, we're making the wrong decision, and be brave enough to go, you know what, we've gone far enough down this track, we've got to stop, and we've got to scrap everything done, we've got to start again. Now, sometimes you just can't do that. Sometimes you make a commitment and you say, oh God, I made the wrong decisions here, but I'm halfway there, so now it's damage control. I have to now really see how I can limit the damage by really making what is an uncomfortable decision. And that's something that happens every day at work. You know, you just will make, hopefully not the big decisions, but you'll make choices that in retrospect you'll think, I could have done that a bit better, I could have done that slightly differently. But the more you get into the rhythm of trusting your instincts, I think hopefully the less that happens. And for me, that's my personal sort of mantra.
Because it's already feeling right when you see just the direction you're going in.
Yeah, and other things change, evolve too. You can start to shoot a scene as simple as shooting a scene in the sunshine. The cloud can come over. You might have for months been praying for sun that day, God, this scene will only work in the sunshine. It's right for the story. It's right for the script. Everything's right. It looks fantastic. And the clouds come over. And you're fixated into things. So you're then presented with a problem. You know, ideologically, you're now in the wrong place. And visually it's wrong, but you have no choice. You've got to film. And then out of that, those problems, sometimes great things can happen. You've got to be able to let go of it and go, you know what? Well, hang on, now the clouds come over, but it looks sort of weird. And that area over there that, you know, and the sun didn't work at all, that we could maybe stage the scene there. And in fact, you know what? It looks pretty good. In fact, you know, maybe it's better than our original idea. Because often the planning process, I find when you plan things, you often you're recreating things you've either done before or seen before. If you know, there's a chance that you'll be in a repetitive mode because you'll say, well, you know, that should be great in the sun because it's triggered by something that you've witnessed. Whereas sometimes that's the transition into that thing of being open-minded. It's better to be open so that when it is different, you can move and go, you know, this is sort of original. And the film's got quite a few moments in that when things changed, and we had to adapt.
I thought there was something very interesting I don't know if this taps into decisions you made on set, but I thought there was something very interesting in the scene of the political debate, the mayoral debate, and the Russell Crowe character was blocked very closed to the other candidate, as if that was the savvy move of a expert politician, and the other character, the challenger, was open and so they're both basically right to left on screen. Yeah. And I also noticed that a lot of your camera positions were asymmetrical on this side, on camera left side of the median between the two of them, as if to give a little bit of extra weight to screen left to accentuate that. Was that something that you felt and responded to by watching their performances, or did you know you were going to do that ahead of time?
That was no. That in fact, I'd even say that probably wasn't premeditated. It's good that it worked out like that. So, I think when you look at it, but it's an example of that genuinely was a happy accident, and it was not planned, but I think it worked well.
I think so too. You mentioned being an operator. That leads me to two questions, and then I'm going to open it up to the room.